Hello everyone, today's video I'll be talking about The Crow. This year marks the 30th anniversary when The Crow came out. Lately I've been a face thinking and talking about non-stop on The Crow, where I'm still animated. Not will this be a video on The Crow movie, but I'll talk about the comic book in between this video, the difference between the movie and the comic to some degree. The Crow is one of my all-time favorite movies. This is a movie I can talk about for hours, but I don't want to make this a long video. As you can tell by the t-shirt, the DVD, the comic book, and the figure I have of The Crow, I'm a huge dedicated fan of The Crow. This figure right here is something that my brother-in-law gave me a couple of years ago, back when I was a teenager in 2009. I told him how much I loved the movie and how I became a fan at that time period. He gave this to me as a little gift, which was very nice of him to do that. Before I dive into this video, here's some history of my background, how The Crow became one of my all-time favorite movies, and how it impacted me as a person. The Crow is an underground comic book written by James O'Barr, based on his real-life tragedy when him and his fiancée were coming home from an event, and they got into a car accident and were hit by a drunk driver. James O'Barr survived, but his fiancée was killed, and that's where the idea of The Crow came from. James O'Barr also based The Crow reading about a couple that were killed in Detroit over a $20 engagement ring. I highly recommend you go check out the James O'Barr documentary interview where he explains his life story and his inspiration for The Crow. From watching that documentary, James O'Barr came from a broken, dysfunctional family. His mother was an alcoholic, and when he was born, she did not remember what day he was born, so the doctors wrote down his birth certificate, born January 1st. As I said before in some past videos, I was a big comic book fan growing up as a little kid. Seeing this movie reading the comic book, it amazed and fascinated me how this was not like any other superhero comic book I read before. Brandon Lee said it best in one of his last interviews: The Crow is not like Superman or Spider-Man, where The Crow has superpowers, he does not come back to fight crime for life, he wasn't bitten by a radioactive spider, he's not sent from another planet. The Crow did not fight for truth, justice, and the American way. But in some ways, though, The Crow has a little similarity between Batman and the Punisher, both coming from tragedy. The comic book is like a film noir in the style of a gothic atmosphere horror movie. It's sad and a tragic story. It's poetic on love, death, memories, crime, corruption, and the soul of the spirit putting the right things together to let the soul can rest in peace. This movie is one of the early R-rated comic movies for the time. This movie also came out the same year as The Mask and the Shadow. These movies were basically based on comic books that were not that popular until the movies came out. It was directed by Alex Proyas, I'm not sure I'm saying his name right, who later went on to direct movies like Dark City, I, Robot, and Knowing. After seeing this movie, I read the comic book 1 year later. The comic book was phenomenal, fantastic, great art design that was done well in black and white style like in Sin City. This was also the kind of movie when it first came out. It was a success and a hit with fans and critics, but did not have a big fan following around that time when the movie came out. But in recent years, it's gained a big cult following. Even for me, this was a movie I had no idea what it was, and discovered it later in my life as a teenager, just randomly out of nowhere. My first view of The Crow was in 2008 when I was a sophomore in high school at the time. My grandfather passed away around that time from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Around that time, I was going through a personal tragedy of my own at the time my grandfather passed away. It was hard to imagine life without him because we were very close. He was like a second dad to me. This was my dad's father. One night I'm flipping through channels in my basement. I come across The Crow. As a stupid dumb teenager, I'm thinking to myself, what is this? At first, I'm thinking the title sounds dumb and stupid, but as I'm watching the movie, I'm like drawn to it, thinking to myself, this is a great movie. And before I knew that Bruce Lee had a son who died at the time watching The Crow, and I'm asking myself, who is this actor? How come I never heard or seen him around before? I looked it up and was shocked and surprised. Not only did the movie grab my attention, but it also surprised me to read about it, and would never imagine reading about someone dying accidentally on a movie set like that. Don't judge me or think I'm weird for what I'm about to say right here. With being attracted to the concept of this movie and the comic book as a teen, I had this notion, wishing, thinking my grandfather was going to come back 1 year later, but of course, he did not come back 1 year later after his passing. This movie also taught me a valuable lesson, realizing that in life, we're all going to die at some point in life, that we must enjoy and cherish every second in life. Also, when my friend Chris Mano passed away, I watched this movie feeling the same way I felt when my grandfather passed away. Feeling sad, losing a friend of mine was like a brother to me. The other thing about this movie, if you love heavy metal music and comic books, combine this movie is for you. Alright, now that we got the personal stuff out of the way, now onto the video review. Eric Draven, played by the late great Brandon Lee, who was the son of martial artist Bruce Lee, who prior to this was on his way to stardom, starring in action movies like Rapid Fire, Showdown Little Tokyo. I've seen those movies before. They were okay movies. They were nothing special. They were just your basic stereotypical 90s action movies for the time period. He was trying to follow his own footsteps and find his own voice as an actor at the time, Brandon Lee. This movie shows that Brandon Lee could have been a big star and had a lot more to offer as an actor and not be typecast as an action hero. Brandon Lee plays Eric Draven in this movie. A rock and roll musician was engaged to his girlfriend Shelley Webster, a free-spirited woman who appreciated the small things in life. Shelley was a kind, soft, sweet, and gentle person. Shelley and Eric had a strong love that we all want in life. Believe it or not, Cameron Diaz was offered the role of Shelley Webster, but she turned it down because she did not like the script. In the comic book, Shelley Webster is a blonde inspired from James O'Barr's real-life girlfriend. In the movie, they made her a brunette. Why the change? No idea. In the comic book, Eric and Shelley were killed on a date night in the middle of nowhere, coming across these thugs who killed him for no reason. It was basically wrong place at the wrong time. Eric was shot paralyzed and had to suffer watching his fiancée getting beaten to death and raped by 4 low-life scumbag thugs. After his death, 1 year later, he's resurrected. He comes back from the dead. At first, he's lost, confused. He does not remember who he was in his past life. The crow guides him, reminds him who he was, and he realizes his purpose is coming back is to avenge him and his fiance's death, to set justice right, then his soul will rest in peace. The memories of him and Shelley and his tragic death are painful for Eric to remember. What was once a beautiful love life that he had ended tragically for him and Shelley. Shelley was the love of Eric's life, but like the comic book, this is very important. Eric tortures himself with the memories he had with Shelley, and the crow reminds him to stop remembering torturing himself to focus on the mission. Eric feels alone, cannot relate to people who are alive because he is dead. Eric knows what it's like to be dead and die. Despite Eric being tragic in the movie, he's a badass. He quotes poems just like in the comic book when he kills his victims. In the comic book, he practices ballet, but not in this movie. Anytime I watch this movie, whenever Eric's being threatened, he says, "Go ahead, shoot me, I'm already dead." And to think in real life, Brandon Lee is dead. It's like those lines foreshadowed his death to some degree. Back when I was a teenager watching this movie, I wanted to dress up as the Crow for Halloween. I really liked the makeup on the Crow in this movie, but I have no talent in makeup effect artist, not even close. I wish. I'm no Lon Chaney Sr. The villain Top Dollar is a corrupt, pure evil, sadistic, the devil, powerful, has no remorse, is an evil bastard. It's messed up that his girlfriend is also his half-sister. Incest right here. His first scene is with his girlfriend slash stepsister. They killed another woman during a three-way. His girlfriend Mika and stepsister, she had a fetish for eyes. We don't see her take the dead woman's eyes out. She also sees the connection of the crows, what makes Eric Draven invincible and gives him power. With her obsession of eyes, it foreshadows her death later in the movie when the crowbird attacks her and she falls down the church bells. This death scene feels like something out of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds when you think about it. Fans have pointed out in the movie that it hints that she has some kind of psychic powers that's not explained. Me and my friend Jeremy recently went to Chiller Theater. I met by Ling. She was super nice, cool person, and she liked my Crow t-shirt that I'm wearing right here. She liked my dedication of being a fan of the Crow. And she also signed my DVD copy right here. Hopefully you can see that. Ling signed a photo of her character when she's trying to capture the Crow. And also at the bottom, if you can see, it's one of my favorite scenes of the movie of the fight scene showdown between Eric and the gangs. I splurged a little bit buying one of her t-shirts that she signed, which was very nice of her. It cost me a little extra, but it was worth it. Grange, played by Tony Todd, you all might know as Candyman, has a small part in this movie. He plays a simple side henchman who tells Top Dollar about who this unknown vigilante killer is. I met Tony Todd at Monster Made in 2016. Super cool, chill dude. We talked about the Crow, and I asked him about how Brandon Lee was, and he said Brandon was a very nice guy. After finding Funboy's dead body, he spots Eric by the window, and he shushes him. That'll be our little secret. The gangs that kill Eric and Shelly are a bunch of low-life piece of shit garbages that get what they deserve. Anytime I watch this movie, read the combo, I'm like, good riddance to these scumbags. Not a loss. They were awful people. Sometimes you can say the performance of this movie can be a little bit over the top sometimes, more comic booky. Like, for example, when they're shouting, "Fire it up! Fire it up! Fire up!" before they blow up a building, or at a bar drinking, swallowing bullets that are high, pointing guns at each other, not knowing which gun is loaded. Tintin, he pawns Shelly's ring at Gideon's pawn shop. The Crow signals Eric. Eric falls and laughs to scare Tintin. The first one to get killed. I like when Eric catches one of his knives. Tintin is in shock and Eric throws the knife at him. Eric says to him, "Victims, aren't we all?" Stabs him. He got stabbed in every major organ, alphabetical order. In the comic book, Eric shoots him in the head. After killing Tintin, he steals his jacket. Funboy's a piece of shit junkie. He's such a dick when he tells Sarah to get lost because he's having sex with her mother. He's also an asshole when he mimics Sarah that the police bought her dinner. Someone bought me dinner, the police. What a dick. This is the one that did not change from the comic book. When Funboy is high with Shelly's mother, Eric plays tricks on him. He tells him to shoot him, which he does. Then he sees Eric's hand heal. Then Eric says, "Jesus Christ," walks into a hotel. Eric shoots him in the leg. Funboy faints in shock. Then Eric kills Funboy by ODing him. He deserved it. T-Bird's the leader of the gang, played by Patrick Kelly, who you might recognize from Command on the Warriors. Confession, I've never seen the Warriors before. It's not a big role. He does a good job in this movie, giving it his all. He was also in one of the John Wick movies. One of my favorite kills in this movie is when Eric straps T-Bird in the car and refreshes his memory of who he is. He has that look of scared shock on his face. How is this possible? This is the real world. There ain't no coming back. Then Eric turns the car on. It drives, flies off, and the car explodes. Lights the oil, leaving the Crow calling card. T-Bird's reaction seeing Eric was alive was like a RoboCop moment. "You're dead! We killed you!" Skank is the last one Eric kills. When Skank shows Top Dollar who the Crow is, he's scared and worried, knowing that he will kill him. Despite what I said before, Top Dollar's a bad person. It was a little funny when he sees Skank worried and scared. He says, "We should have this videotape and play this in slow motion." I like it when Eric says to Skank, "This isn't going to be a villain, huh, Skank?" Throws him out the window. When Skank steals someone's car to chase Eric and T-Bird, the guy he punches looks identical to Henry Rollins, but it's not him. I never found if Henry Rollins was credited this movie or not. Getting the pawn show had the ring Eric gave Shelly rips off. Tintin only gave him $50 because there was blood on it. And little did he know he was collecting a ring that once belonged to some innocent people who died tragically and horrific. When Eric breaks the door, he shoots him and is shocked that Eric can't die. His response is, "Shit on me!" I have no idea what the heck that means. I like the way he interrogates him, stabs and threatens and tortures him until he finds the ring he gave Shelly. Eric quotes the Raven. The pawn shop scene is another close thing to the comic book. They did very well. Actually, it's the opening scenes of the book. After Eric finds the ring, he tells Gideon to tell the gang that death is coming for them tonight. Tell them Eric Draven sends his regards. It's like Batman 89. "Tell your friends about me." What are you? "I'm Batman." Gideon says they're gonna erase your sorry ass. Eric says, "Is that gasoline I smell?" Eric shoots his pawn shop, explodes. He uses the ring as his bulge, which I thought was pretty cool. Top Dollar stabs in the mouth, probably one of the most brutal death scenes in the movie. This video is not complete talking about the tragic accident of Brandon Lee, the son of famous martial arts icon Bruce Lee. Like father, like son, both were on their way to stardom early in their life, but both died very young and tragic. Bruce Lee died of a pain med drug overdose, and Brandon Lee was accidentally shot on the set of The Crow, thinking that the gun that they were using was fake. But as it turns out, there was a real bullet inside the gun, and to this day, it's still unsure how a real bullet got inside that gun. I remember watching an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, did an episode on this. I highly recommend it. There's also the Curse documentary series on Amazon. Also highly recommend that. Go check those out. It's a very sad, tragic story how Brandon Lee died during the making of this movie. This movie shows how great of an actor he was. He could have done more than just be a martial arts action hero. We'll never know what else Brandon Lee could have bought us. Anytime I've gone back to rewatch this movie, I ask myself in certain scenes and shots, was this Brandon or a stuntman? According to what I've read, Brandon Lee did finish the majority of this movie, but they had a stuntman finish the rest of this movie after his death. And believe it or not, the stuntman who doubled for Brandon Lee in this movie was Chad Stahelski. I'm probably not saying his name right, I apologize. That's right, the director of the John Wick movies was the stuntman for Brandon Lee on this movie. In a way, compare this tragic accident to what happened recently with Alec Baldwin's Western movie. Before Brandon Lee's death, he was set to marry his fiancée Eliza Hutton. They originally planned to get married on April 17th, but after the tragic accident, that changed everything. From what I've read, 10 years later, she did get married. Her and her husband have a daughter. She's a very quiet person, rarely does interviews, talking about the tragic accident of her ex-fiancé. In 2014, I went to Monster May with my horror and sci-fi club, my old college. They had a Crow 20-year anniversary reunion. I met Sophia Shines, who played Shelley, was there. Tony Todd and Ernie Hudson were there too. But despite meeting Sophia Shines, I did not meet Tony Todd or Ernie Hudson, despite I mentioned this video I met Tony Todd, but that was 2 years later. They had a Crow Q&A, and that was cool and awesome. Of course, I went to that Q&A. I met Michael Massey, the actor who played Fun Boy, one of the thugs, the man who accidentally shot Brandon Lee during the making of this movie. He was a very nice guy. We had a nice chit-chat. When I said you played Fun Boy, he said, "Pretty, pretty, pretty." It was very nice of him to quote the movie for me. He gave me a free autograph. And you're probably asking yourself, why did he give me a free autograph? I honestly don't know. My guess is because I did not insult, harass him, or was a jerk to him saying that you're the guy who shot Brandon Lee. I did mention the accident, but I did not say in front of his face that you're the guy who shot Brandon Lee. If you ask me from watching interviews, I believe that he was not involved and not know the gun was loaded with a real gun. Also, he admitted that he was not supposed to be handling the gun. The gunman double, or whatever you want to call it, was not available that day. You can tell by his body language how sad he feels about the accident. He admitted he had nightmares about the accident, and that it haunted him until the day he died, and how he never got over that accident. In an interview, he said after the accident, he took a year off from acting. I guess he needed time off to recover from that event. Sadly, Michael Massey is no longer with us. He passed away in 2016 from stomach cancer. I hope you met Brandon Lee and heaven made peace with him, and that Brandon Lee forgave you, knowing that you were not the one responsible, not knowing there was a real bullet inside that gun. It's true they say about life being full of surprises. I'll never meet Brandon Lee, but I met the man who accidentally shot him by accident. Ernie Hudson's like the Commissioner Gordon of this movie. Eric Draven trusts Sergeant Daryl Albrecht. He sees how he's a good cop and wants to do the right thing and bring justice. He's like a sidekick and covers for Eric Draven in this movie. In the comic, this character was white. In this movie, they changed it up. I think it works out very well. And hey, it's Ernie Hudson. You can't go wrong. If you love Ghostbusters, you'll love this movie. When Sergeant Albert realizes the Crow is Eric Draven, he's shocked, surprised, and spooked, not knowing what to make of it, how Eric Draven is still alive, and how he came back from the dead. I like the scene when Eric and Sergeant Albrecht are talking, and even Eric himself does not know how he's alive. He asks him, "Are you some kind of ghost?" And Eric responds, "Boo!" It's like Batman 89 Joker. He asks him how Shelley died. He touches his face, and he sees how he stayed with Shelley to maybe see she was going to survive and make it through. But she didn't, of course. Eric falls back and he yells, "Don't touch me!" He explained that he's getting divorced. Without explanation, I guess it did not work out with his wife. Besides having serious good chemistry, they have like some funny moments, like when he comes in his apartment in his underwear, Eric responds, "You still have your hat on." Or he tells him not to smoke cigarettes, they'll kill you. And just like Batman, the Crow disappears, and he responds, "I knew we were going to do that." At the church, when he saves Eric, he has a good plan. When he sees Eric is bleeding, they need plan B. He decides to quit smoking after getting shot. I like how he's a friend and uncle to Sarah, keeping an eye on her every now and then, making sure she's alright, and how he treats her to a hot dog occasionally. After Sarah sees Eric, She has a conversation with Albert how he believes her on seeing Eric that he's still alive. I love the church shootout when Eric is about to be killed. He comes in saving Eric. Nice epic showdown, badass action scene. Yeah, Ernie Hudson. Margot Rodriguez plays Tor as an asshole, head of the police department. He suspends Sergeant Albert thinking he's covering for someone, not telling the truth of what happened to the murders. The character Sarah was sympathetic, lovable. He felt bad she was raised by a mother who was a hooker, a drug addict, who neglected her. Eric and Shella, not her parents, raised her like a daughter. Anytime I watch this movie, I feel so sad for her that she didn't have a regular upbringing. She's innocent. Anytime I watch her scenes with Brand, I feel this sense of sorrow. Despite Eric came back, he cannot be her friend anymore because he's dead and she's alive. At the same time, he still loved and cared for Sarah. I love their scenes together at the cemetery when Eric tells Sarah that the cemetery is the safest place in the world to be. Sarah says because everyone is dead. Such great dialogue, especially how true it is on cemeteries are the safest place in the world to be. Saying one last goodbye before he goes back, he gives Sarah the ring that he gave to Shelley for something to remember her by. In the comic book, this character was named Cher, was a minor character. In this movie, she's a tomboy, likes to roller skate. Again, that was not in the comic book of the character. Not only does the Crow Eric Draven come back to avenge his death in Shelley, Eric does a good deed helping Sarah reconnect with her mother and help her mother get her act together, clean up, and sober up. Eric makes Sarah's mother realize how she needs to be responsible, raising her daughter, how her daughter is lost without her mother. It was her epiphany moment, and Eric helped her wake her up. The next morning, Sarah wakes up to find Darla, her mother, trying to be Mother of the Year. At first, Sarah is not convinced, just when Darla's about to throw the eggs away, until Sarah reminds her mom how she liked her eggs cooked. No matter how estranged their relationship was, she did not want her mother to go back to being a junkie. It was a nice touching moment between her and her mother in this movie. In the comic book, she calls Eric a clown, well, because he does look like a clown. This is the kind of movie that I have a lot of favorite scenes and moments. I can comment on these scenes all day long, but here are some of my favorite scenes. For example, Eric Draven's resurrection, the Crow brought him back to his apartment, reminding him why he's back from the dead. I forgot to mention this earlier, how in the comic book the Crow talks, but I guess they decided not to use that for the movie. But it works out fine right here, that basically the Crow has body language instead of dialogue. Eric puts on his mayo, begins his quest for revenge. Great shot, and the thunder and lightning is awesome. Also has cool car chase sequences. It has cool action scenes, some of my favorite in movies. I like the scene when the Crow crashes Top Dollar's meeting as a showdown between Eric and the other crime boss gangs. Eric shoots them, throws swords, knives. This came natural for Brandon Lee doing fight choreographs from his background in martial arts. After killing Skate, he runs away from the police. As I mentioned before, just when it looks like Eric's going to be killed, Officer Albert saves Eric and shoots Grange. Awesome, epic, badass action scene, yeah! The final fight showdown between Eric and Top Dollar. When Top Dollar confesses he's the one responsible for him and his girlfriend's death, Eric gives back his painful memories to Top Dollar. Top Dollar falls on a spiked gargoyle and blood comes out. Good riddance to him. Again, this was not in the comic book, but again, it works out very well right here. This is another movie that shows a good example of CGI done right around this time in film. You can debate an art the CGI holds up to this movie to this day. To me, it's passable, just alright compared to what would later come in movies with crappy CGI. Especially how they had to CGI the stuntman who replaced Brandon Lee. In the Curse documentary, they showed a picture of the stuntman who looked like Sting, the wrestler. Then again, I don't watch WWE, but I do know this is where Sting got his inspiration for his appearance on the WWE. To me, this movie is a good balance of using practical and CGI done right. This is one of my favorite movie soundtracks. I like the song Cured by the Bird when Eric puts the makeup on for the first time to start his vengeance. I like the song Pain and Retribution. This is my favorite song, the Crow soundtrack. I like the opening tune, it feels like a choir chorus is singing at a church. When I went to the Crow Q&A at Monster Man, I learned that Brandon Lee did learn how to play guitar. I love the scene when Eric Drave's on the roof playing his guitar like he was giving his last concert, going with a bang before he goes back. Henry Rollins did a song for this movie when he was established at the time in the Rollins Band. This is a recording right here that I forgot to mention in the video that I forgot to film, so here it is. One thing I've noticed from fans of The Crow, and I've noticed myself from research, and I think I might have mentioned this in my Dark Knight video, but don't quote me on this. I know this movie is compared to Heath Ledger's Joker. Both Lee and Ledger died tragically, and were both 28 when they died. Also, Ledger supposedly took inspiration from this movie as inspiration for his betrayal as the Joker for The Dark Knight. Just like Heath Ledger, he was on his way to stardom. The Dark Knight would have been his big breakout, but sadly we'll never know what else Heath Ledger had to offer as an actor. Lee and Ledger are examples of two talented actors gone too soon. Fans compare certain scenes to The Crow that were inspired possibly for The Dark Knight. For example, the scene when Eric Draven crashes Top Dollar's meeting. This scene is very identical to the Joker in The Dark Knight when he comes out of nowhere making an offer to the mob bosses on killing Batman. Another example, this was in The Dark Knight Rises, the third and final Nolan Batman trilogy, when Batman uses fire to light up his back signal, similar to when the Crow lights up his crow symbol. There's probably more examples, but I don't want to waste too much time making this a video comparing The Crow to The Dark Knight. Here's a brief recap on the Crow sequels, my brief thoughts on the upcoming remake. After the success of the first Crow movie, they made 3 sequels. The sequel was not a follow-up to the first movie. It was an anthology comic book series. Basically, anyone can be the Crow. The sequels were based on different Crow comic books, but I've honestly never read the other Crow comic books. I've only read the first one. Maybe someday I'll check those out out of curiosity. The first sequel was The Crow City of Angels. When I first saw this one as a teenager, I did not like it. A few years later, someone told me it was not too bad, so I gave it a second rewatch. This one is alright, but I have the same liking this movie that I do with the first movie. It's not horrible, it's an okay Crow sequel. It's not much of a sequel to the first movie. The only recurring character that comes back is Sarah, but she's played by a different actress, Mira Kirshner. This movie had a lot of production problems and studio interference. It was the last Crow movie released in the movie theaters to date. Vincent Perez was alright. I just don't remember his performance that well like I do with Brandon Lee from the first movie. Even though he plays a guy coming back to avenge his son's death, I feel bad saying this about a character someone was killed in the movie. He's not bad. I don't know why. I just don't find this guy that memorable or interesting. Maybe because I've seen this concept of parents' revenge losing their child done better in other movies. It's a movie I rarely watch and have gone back to. The actress who played the Yellow Rangers in this movie, Toy Trang, I'm probably not saying her name right, I apologize. She plays one of the gangs who killed the main character's son for witnessing the gang committing a crime. Sadly, this is her last movie. She passed away in 2001 in a car accident. Seeing her kill the kid ruined my childhood, especially how her image was being a role model to younger kids at the time with her popularity in the Power Rangers TV show. As a kid watching the Power Rangers, there was no internet at the time. I had no idea what the Power Rangers actors did outside the Power Rangers TV show. Or heck, I don't remember her death because I did not watch news media that much. I read about her tragic death years later when I was older as a teenager. The last 2 Crow movies, The Crow's Salvation and Wicked Prayer, I only saw these once. They were very bland and forgetful. I can't comment these too much because I don't remember a lot about these movies, to be honest. The Crow's Salvation was released direct-to-video, not released theatrically. It had an interesting, unique story concept where you had this guy on death row, falsely accused of a crime he did not commit after he's executed. He comes back to life, finds the real killer. His deceased girlfriend's younger sister helps him, played by Kirsten Dunst. Just think, 2 years later she played Mary Jane in the Spider-Man movies. Again, this is a pretty good idea, it was not done well or not given proper justice. When I saw this as a teenager, I zoned out not paying attention because I found this one very boring. The Wicked Prayer of John Connor as the Crow sent him back in time to not do this movie. Again, not a lot to say about this one. It was dry, flat, bland, and forgetful. Before these last 2 movies, there was a Crow TV show. I saw this once as a teenager, I thought it was pretty good and alright, but sadly it was only canceled after 1 season. I'm not sure how they would have made a show out of this because again, like I said before, The Crow is not like Batman, Superman, or Spider-Man where he fights crime for life. The Crow only comes back temporary. A remake to The Crow is set to be released later this year in August, starring Bill Skarsgård, aka Pennywise. The remake, who the heck knows? I'm not sure I'll bother. To me, the first original Crow movie with Brandon Lee is what made The Crow great and special. The one thing I can see them doing differently in the remake is making the Skull Cowboy that was in the comic book. Originally, the Skull Cowboy was going to be a main character in this movie who mentors and guides Eric Draven. In the comic book, he appears here and there, but he's going to have a big role in this movie. The Skull Cowboy is a symbol of the afterlife and the supernatural. It's in that he was a former Crow. From watching interviews of Michael Berryman seeing what he was originally going to look like as a Skull Cowboy, the makeup effect looked pretty awesome and cool. It's just sad his scenes were cut because of Brandon Lee's death. But this character is semi in the movie, but only seen for a brief second in some deleted scenes. He was played by Michael Berryman, you might recognize from Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. You can go on YouTube and look up the deleted scenes, but the audio is not the best. Also, The Crow movie has been talked about for years. I never thought it would finally happen after all these years later. Before I end this video, here are my friends Joey's recording on his thoughts on The Crow.
Yeah, The Crow, 1994 was a cool movie. It stars Brandon Lee. Yeah, the original Crow, in my opinion, was the best. The one that starred Brandon Lee. And they probably would have had him in the sequels, too. But he died because of an accident. You know, some of it online says his brain swelled or something is how he died. But, you know, one thing I seen online says brain swelled, but most of them say he died from an accident on set, you know, with a prop gun. Because most of it says that, so that's what really happened. But it's a shame because he died on set by accident because they were using a prop gun, and he was young yet because the thing, you know, it malfunctioned, but it's a shame because he was young yet, and not only that, he probably would have been in the sequels too. So, because in my opinion, he was like the best one that played the Crow, and the original, in my opinion, was the best too because usually the first ones are the best, you know, in my opinion. But I you know, it's just a shame that happened and everything. The Crow Salvation from the year 2000. That's another one I like too. That was another one of my favorites. That's another one I really, you know, I thought was good too. I mean, it was a different actor playing a Crow, but it was good. It was another good movie, but the original was my best out of all of them, and you know, the one that starred Brandon Lee. So I in my opinion, I would check it out at The Crow, the original. It's really a cool movie. Of course, horror is my favorite out of all the movies. But I like action too. This is really an action movie, but it's still a cool movie. It's, you know, I still like it. Then there was another scene, like in the middle of the movie, where these guys and people were sitting at a table, and they were talking, and this other guy said, this other one, that his name was Stank or something, and he asked him what he felt. You know, he said, I feel like an old worm on a big fucking hook. And then the other guy said, he was saying it too about what, you know. He said, I feel like an old worm on a big fucking hook. I really thought that scene was hilarious. It was funny. And then the Crow came in after, you know, the one, Brandon Lee was the one playing it, but he came in after, and they were shooting him and stuff. They were trying to kill him. But what happened is that, of course, in the movie, he didn't die. But it's a cool movie. See, in that movie, he wasn't supposed to die or anything. He never did, but of course, it's only a movie. In real life, you know, the accident would happen. He died, but it's a shame. You know, too bad he wasn't like that in real life, where he was like, you know, didn't die. But unfortunately, it was only a movie. But yeah, you know. But like I say, you know, I recommend to check this movie out. It's really cool. This movie. It's from 1994, and you know, I would recommend to check it out.
This is the movie I find myself going back to often that I can watch any time. Compared to watching this movie as a teenager, as I've gotten older, I find myself always finding something new to say about The Crow. Not only was this movie a call for me after losing my grandfather in high school, it was a go-to escapism movie at the time when I was a teenager having a hard time in school, and it still is to this day. This is also the kind of movie where they made changes from the comic book to the movie, but it works out very well naturally. Some people may prefer the comic book or the movie, or I'm more neutral in between, loving both at the same time on different levels. Despite the tragic death of Brandon Lee, this movie is still great, amazing, phenomenal, sensational. Thank you for watching my video on The Crow. See you next time. Remember, it can't rain all the time.